Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Courtside with Beilinson Tennis, part of the Tennis Channel Podcast Network. We said we would do a Laver Cup recap. It's Monday night in the States. Laver Cup just finished. Went to the very last match, Steve, for the decider. Team Europe takes it 13-11. We'll get into it. Mostly we're going to talk about Sunday because that's when a lot of the action happened. Sunday being the most important day, with each match being 3 points. For those that are not quite as familiar with the format, Laver Cup, each match, they play four matches. Match on Friday, each counts 1 point. On Saturday, it's 2 points. And then on Sunday, it's 3 points. You have one doubles match and three singles matches each day. Just to give a brief synopsis on it, after Friday, it was deadlocked at 2-2. After Saturday, it was 8-4 Team World. And then Sunday, the all important day where each match is 3 points. We'll go into it before we tell about the final. Obviously, I just said earlier that Team Europe wins 13-11. Before we get into the details, Steve, for one, this is the first time I believe that the Laver Cup did not have Roger Federer playing it, Rafa Nadal playing it, or Novak Djokovic playing in it. And, again, you're a little worried about the staying power of the event without those three playing with it. I thought it was just as great as an event as it's been in previous years.
It was because the format works. As I've told you in the past, it's one I'm very conflicted about because from the standpoint of the entertainment, you can't beat it because after two sets they play that super tiebreak. So things are moving along. It's drama. There's that extra tension. You know that if the player's lost the first set, wins the second, you're going to straight to the 10-point tiebreak. So I love it for entertainment and drama and suspense. What I don't like as much is I feel like these are going in the record books, David. You know, that it originally Laver Cup was not included in ATP stats. Then a couple of years ago that was changed, and retroactively they brought all those results back in. And to me, and I felt the same way. By the way, in the ATP Tour went to played a third set as a super tiebreak as well in doubles. When they started doing that in doubles, I'm not in favor of that because to me, real matches you got to play them out. Now, for the fans, it's probably better. For the fans who are there for an afternoon's entertainment for television, it's tremendous from both of their standpoints. I just, as an historian, that's my only gripe. But I feel like it shouldn't go in the record books. It just should be a great spectacle for tennis.
And not only do a lot of tennis fans probably agree with you, I would think a lot of the players also would agree with you on that, Steve. I agree. It's even though it may not, let's say you said it doesn't have to go in the record books, it doesn't stop these players from competing
Oh no,
110%. They want to beat each other's brains out and represent their teams. So I'm in
oh no,
agreement with
I
you.
don't want to. I'm glad you brought that up because I don't want to imply anything otherwise. There's no doubt that they're giving everything they have, and they do feel a responsibility to the teammates. There's great spirit for Team Europe and Team World. I just mean that thing that bothers me about. I mean, I feel like ideally, but they just don't have the time with the amount of matches they want to play every day. I wish in a way they could maybe have a fewer matches, but play the third set out. But that's not how they do it. It's a successful formula, all power to them. And this was yet another really enticing 3-day series between the two teams.
It really was. And when we went to bed on Saturday night with 8-4 lead for Team World, I looked at that lineup, Steve, on Sunday, and I was like, "Oh boy." I said to myself, Team World, even though they're up, they better win that first doubles match. They didn't, but I'm saying to myself, they better win that first doubles match because the three singles matches after that, on paper, Team World was underdogs on each one of those. Now, we thought Team World lost the doubles match. Ben Shelton had a big win over Daniil Medvedev, which helped offset Team World losing that doubles match. And then you had, the match that basically decided, I felt, who was going to win with TFO and Zverev. TFO up a set and 4-2.
Yeah, no, listen, I think everybody felt, I think there was a strong consensus on that, that if it came down as it eventually did to Carlos versus Taylor, it was going to be a tall order for Taylor to overcome Carlos, especially in these types of conditions. It was a slow bouncing, a relatively slow court, low bouncing. So ideal for Carlos. He's nothing he likes better than a slow hard court. He's not bothered by lower bounce. Some of the other guys wish the ball would come up a bit more. And he'd already shown in his singles win over Shelton how comfortable he was on that court, put on a dazzling display of shot making. So yeah, and unfortunately, David, I should say for Tiafo, that is, he knew what we all were thinking. And in the back of his mind, although Taylor is his friend and he would be cheering him on without any hesitation, he knew how tough it was going to be for Taylor as well. So he so badly wanted to get the job done against Zverev. And he won a tight tiebreak in the first set. And then, as you say, he was up the break. He's up 4-2 in the second. At 4-3 is the first kind of indifferent or just shaky game that he played on his serve. A couple of questionable mistakes, and Zverev gets back in, and then he grabs another break at the end to make it one set all. And then from 5 points all in the tiebreak, Zverev runs it out. So that was crushing because Tiafo was very gracious at the net and with the umpire and shaking Borg's hand, but then he goes over to and shakes McEnroe's hand, and you saw him kind of smack his racket down. Understandable because he just felt so badly, not just for himself for what would have been a nice win, but realizing the team was now probably going down to defeat.
On Saturday night, Steve, I'm curious, did you kind of feel how I did? Like Team World almost needed to win that first doubles match because those three singles matches were going to be really tough, or how'd you feel going to bed Saturday night about Team World's chances?
Yeah, no, I thought so. I did the doubles. I thought they would win the doubles, and was very good in the doubles, had been previously, so I thought he would do it again, and he did not. He didn't have a good day on the volley there in the doubles. Played well in the singles, but yeah, I felt that was going to be important. But then I also thought that going into that singles, I thought Medvedev, having lost to Tiafo in a super tiebreak third set, was probably going to avenge it. I thought maybe on the slower courts that he'd get a few more chances to break than he did against Ben, and it didn't happen for him. Now there was a very unfortunate incident in that match, David. I don't know whether you saw that moment, but in the tiebreak, Medvedev was down 6 points to four, and when he went down 6-4, he got very angry, and he did something very similar to what he'd done in Australia at the start of the year in an early round match. Not smashing his racket on the court, but flinging it so that it could easily have bounced off the court into the stands at the side of the court, hit somebody, in which case he would have been disqualified. So obviously Shelton looked over. He initially was sort of celebrating his being at set point and wasn't paying much attention. Then he noticed it, and the look on his face was like, "Oh my God!" He couldn't believe his eyes. And Medvedev was very fortunate. And then not only that, he comes back and wins that tiebreak. So I thought then, and then Medvedev had 3-2, love 40 in the second set. It was a very gritty effort from Shelton to pull that out because he's almost out of it there, almost down a set in a break. And then at 3-4, he had another tough game on his serve. And eventually he breaks, wins the set, and he wins in a super tiebreak to over Medvedev, who did not. So that was an interesting couple of days for him, David, to lose to both Tiafo and Shelton in the singles.
Yeah.
On top of what's been a disappointing year, you can tell he's a little distraught about his. It's not that he feels he can't play anymore, but when you get in the habit of losing, and he wasn't happy with how he played against Sinner at the U.S. Open either, even though he took a set, he wasn't happy with his performance. So tough times for him. But I thought coming in, he was going to win that match. And when Shelton won, I thought, okay. And then you felt like, okay, it gives Tiafo a chance to close this out. So coming in, he's in a nice spot. And he's quieting the German crowd, who, of course, thirsting for a Zverev win, but he couldn't finish it off. And he didn't play terribly well in the last set breaker after 5 points all either. So a tough day for Tiafo. You had a feel for him on the heels of his U.S. Open 5-set loss to Fritz in the semis. That was a tough blow for him because he was right. It was sort of in his grasp, in his hands to bring victory to the team world, and he just wasn't able to do it.
Yeah, and I mentioned this is the first time that we didn't have Federer, Nadal, or Novak playing, but Carlos Alcaraz, this was his initiation to Laver Cup, Steve. 8 of the 13 points, Steve. And not only that, it's nice to have a guy like Alcaraz be the first guy, playing on a Sunday and the anchor for your team, the last guy on your team. And when it did come down to him and Fritz, Carlos won first set rather easily, 6-2. And then credit to Taylor. I mean, he fought back. He did not go away. Obviously,
Not at all.
Fritz is having a lot of these emotions watching Tiafo have a lead, almost clinch it for them. Then he has to go in the locker room, back out, try to root. He's going in and out. It's not easy for a guy like Taylor, who maybe I don't have to play, maybe I do have to play, and if I do
Right,
have to
right,
play, it's the
right.
deciding match. It's a lot going on between the ears for Taylor, but he
But
did
also
fight. He
he
did
knows
fight and
he
in that
also
second set.
knows, in addition to everything you said, he knows how difficult that assignment is. So yeah, obviously he doesn't want it to have to be a live match, but he'll he'll take it on if he has to. That was very it was not easy, and then he did get off to a slow start. But Carlos was just in he was in he was just so loose and free and easy and putting on a clinic and the drop shotting and the deep returns and the running backhand winners. He had it all out there, and it was tough for Taylor. But like you said, he's down not only 6-2 but 4-2 in the second set. Then he won 3 games in a row. He finally broke Carlos, and it was 30 all in that 10th game. He was knocking on the door there to maybe somehow steal that set. It didn't work out because Carlos held on and then won the next 2 games. So he had Carlos, who had lost 3 games in a row, then came back to win 3 in a row to finish it off in style. And yeah, you know what, that's the kind of pressure he likes. And he liked having his team. I think he enjoyed being bolstered by his teammates. Plus, I honestly think those are 2 very good matchups for him in these types of conditions. To play Shelton where the court's a bit slower, and you can tell he had pretty good read. He was getting a lot of first serve returns back. Shelton was under pressure on his serve a lot for a 4-4 match, and Carlos really returned well. And then Fritz, I think, unfortunately, is tailor made for him. And I felt sorry for Fritz because that's also on the heels of his final round loss to Sinner at the U.S. Open. Each time he's a bit overmatched. These are 2 great players. They're
Yeah.
2 of the top 3 players. They're gonna, they'll probably end the year at 1-2 in the world if Carlos has a decent end to the year. So poor Fritz, he did beat Zverev. He had a nice win over Zverev in the singles at Laver Cup, so he can be
Three
proud.
times in a row now, Steve. 3 times in a row he's beaten
Yeah,
Wimbledon, U.S. Open, and Laver Cup.
yeah, no, it was a great follow up to Wimbledon where he was 2 sets down and 4, and now this in straight. And he's getting in his head, I think, a bit. No gamesmanship. He's just getting in his head by beating him over and over again. And that was a nice effort indoors. And he was down 4-2 second set of that match and ran it out in straight. So yeah, he could be proud of that, but I'm sure he wished he could have played a less top of the instead of having a top of the line Alcaraz. I think he wished that Carlos could have been a bit off because he's only played him a couple of times now, but each time he's looked a bit confounded. I was glad though that at the very least he made a go of it because at 6-2, 4-2, I wouldn't have been surprised if we were having a 2-2 match. And he went down the right way in the end by playing it so tight in the second set.
Yeah, I agree. And then I also want to acknowledge it's the end of for the captaincies for both Bjorn Borg and John McEnroe. I mean, what a great thing that they had as the first 2 captains. We all know the rivalry they had on court, and then to have them initiate this event and then stay on for as long as they did. Going forward now, Team World will have Andre Agassi. Can't wait to see the energy that he brings into Team World. And then Team Europe, yeah, I don't think a lot of people had this guy's name out there when they were hoping maybe it was Roger, but Yannick Noah. And we all know his flamboyant style, personality, both on and off the court. So it'll be interesting to see that dynamic, what both those 2 guys bring to their respective teams.
Yeah, listen, think about it. In most cases with Davis Cup captains, Patrick McEnroe had, I think, a 10-year run, unusually long run for Patrick. Um, Usually those guys have about a 5-year life as captains, and then they move on. There's a new captain comes aboard, even if that captain has been successful in Davis Cup. So Hero, Borg, and McEnroe going back to 2017. So they both did very well. They had long runs. Agassi is he's well suited to this. It could have been Roddick. You and I have talked about that. Roddick would have also done
I think he's
a
going to be
great.
the next one, Steve. He's going to be the next one.
I suspect you're right. I suspect you're right. But in the meantime, Agassi clearly is taking it seriously. He was interviewed over the weekend a couple of times, and he talked about how he's been touching base. He obviously went over there to feel it and experience it firsthand. But he also talked about how he's been touching base with players, and he wants to try to establish some year-round contact, which is very smart because he's been removed from the game and now he's getting back into it in this past year. And this is a way for him to get to know them a bit better, and then they'll see that his style is different. He was interviewed by Jim Courier a
I
long
saw
time.
that interview. Very well done. Very
Yeah,
well done.
and what was interesting to me was McEnroe saying that Andre is more analytical than he is, and it's true, he is. So the players will be getting used to sort of a different way of going. McEnroe was picked his spots. I thought McEnroe was really did a, see him at the changeovers, and there were a lot of times he'd say nothing,
Yeah.
but he would then pick his spots, and I think it was more effective and powerful that way. And also, he didn't mind the teammates
No.
coming over to offer their advice. McEnroe handled that role, I thought, exceedingly well. But I think Agassi will also be very successful with very different philosophy and maybe more tactical, strategic advice, and the kind of inside the game, the breaking down of the game that he loves so much that we will hear, that we actually heard from him during some of the commentary.
And Yannick Noah, you talk about not saying anything. I mean, Bjorn Borg a lot of times says nothing for
No,
a
true.
very, very long time. It'll be interesting to see the contrast how Noah approaches that during changeovers as well.
No, I think Noah will be very different also. And it's hard for me to know how well he knows all those players, but again, he's not taking this job and going to be cavalier about it. He'll find his niche and he'll do a good job. And again, they'll each pick their. John McEnroe brought up to Agassi about how, of course, his brother Patrick had been his sort of co-captain, coach, whatever you want to call him. And Agassi said he's got a short list for that job. And I'm sure Noah will want to pick somebody that can also be a real benefit to him behind the scenes working with the players. So
And we won't say if you and I are on Andre's short list. We'll leave that to surprise for the spectators. But I'll say right now, if I'm picked, I'm going. Okay, I'm taking it.
okay. Why not? Why not? You should. But
So
that was interesting. It was interesting, and it was interesting to hear Agassi both up in the booth and then in that other interview with Courier and McEnroe talking. You can tell how much it means to him, and he's obviously really looking forward to doing the job. And I think he'll be very good at it. I think he'll do it. He'll do a great job. And McEnroe. I think if you'd asked him in 2017, John, you'll stay aboard through 2024. How do you feel about that? He would have said, "Oh, I'm thrilled." He didn't expect to stay there forever. And he got a couple of wins in, didn't work out so much this time, but he came very close again.
And the next one I think is going to be held in San Francisco. If people have the opportunity to attend, go do it. It's awesome. I was at the one in Chicago. That was 2018. Sold out every night. It was electric. I was surprised at how well that was received in Chicago, just being a professional sports town, but not really a tennis town per se. And it was a great atmosphere. So if you have the opportunity to attend, definitely attend it. With that, before we go, there are a couple other things I wanted to mention, Steve. It was announced before Laver Cup started. Not really a surprise, but Brad Gilbert and Coco Gauff announced that they're splitting up. They're not working together anymore. 4 titles together, Steve, and Brad took over right after Coco had lost first round to Sophia Kenin in Wimbledon. We all know the unbelievable summer they had together again. 4 titles and then culminating with that 2023 U.S. Open title. Pretty good year this year, not great. And then we saw the struggles that Coco had, especially in New York. You're not really surprised at the announcement, right?
Mildly. I had hoped. I'm always the optimist, and I'm a big admirer of Gilbert's work. And I was hoping that she would give him another year. I remember thinking last year that he'd kind of bought himself a few extra years by the fact that they got so successful so fast and winning that first major at the U.S. Open, and that I thought that would cushion him in case this year didn't go as well, so that she then invited him back for at least one more year. I was hopeful of that. It didn't happen. You never know how these players are going to react. I mean, she clearly had a lot of emotional sort of somber moments this year, and some altercations with umpires when she was unhappy with some of the officiating, and you could see at times she was distraught this year. And she's so ambitious, and she kind of, as you know, David, she had made some comments earlier in the year about how many majors she'd like to win, and I think at one point she might have said she's hoping to get to 10 or above, and I think she maybe got a little ahead of herself. And then in terms of Gilbert, I think it's unfortunate because I think there was more good work to be done. Having said that, he'll move on knowing that he helped her to win her first major. Whether they're more or not, he got her to the first one and did a fine job. And hopefully he can find somebody else. And inevitably she will. She will. But I hope maybe the expectations are not quite as high in terms of what she's that, so that whoever the new coach is, they get a longer run. Because this was not a terrible year. She got to the semis in Australia and lost to Sabalenka, semis in the French. She wasn't winning the titles that she would have hoped. She wasn't able to defend the U.S. Open. Navarro beat her in the last two majors. I get it. But I think she also knows that she has herself to blame. I don't mean that harshly, but in the sense that she's the one that's out there. The players got to make it happen. Always makes me think of the famous plane ride that Agassi and Sampras took to Davis Cup in '95 when they left Miami. And they're on the plane, and Agassi's talking about what a fantastic job Gilbert was doing for him. And Sampras nodded and said, I get it, I understand, but when you're serving at 3-4, 30-40 in the final set, he can't do it for you. You have to do it for yourself. And that was always Pete's philosophy. And I wish sometimes players, including Coco, would look at it a bit more that way so that they weren't as quick to blame the coach. Unfortunately, that's not the way things work in this industry. And they're entitled, and Coco, she'll find somebody. And I hope she'll find herself, because she was a much happier person, obviously, when things were going well in the summer of 2023. And it was great to see her in that kind of joyous state. Angst. But next year she has a chance to kind of make amends and start anew and try to see if she can grab another major.
Yeah, I agree. One last thing that was announced just earlier today, not entirely sold that he will be playing, but it was announced Rafa for Spain will be on the Davis Cup roster. Good news. Obviously, everyone likes Rafa and likes to see him play. Not positive that he actually will play. Steve, where are you on that pendulum? You think he will play, or you think he won't play? More,
Yeah,
more or less.
coin flip. But what I'm intrigued by, I wouldn't say necessarily encouraged, but intrigued, is that he could very easily have just said, no, I'm out. He had just pulled out a Laver Cup. He could have just said, no, I need the rest of this year or whatever. And so obviously he's got some hopes, or else he would have gone ahead and just had his name removed. So he has some hopes that by then he's physically up to the task and can try to do it. So it gives me mild encouragement, cautious optimism.
All right, Steve. Well, we wrapped up Laver Cup. We know the fall season is now in full swing. We're a little helter-skelter as far as whether we do these every week or now. I'm always of the opinion that the season is just way too long, but we'll do a few more of these as well.
Well, David, I just hope you don't bail on me if you get that offer for Laver Cup. I hope you'll still do the podcast under
No,
those.
you're coming with me. You're coming with me as my right-hand man. You don't have to worry about that. Steve, thank you for your time, and we'll do this again shortly.
Okay, thank you, David.